Welcome everyone to this special event on rewiring your stress response with Transcendental Meditation. Our special guest today is Dr. Gagné, a renowned expert on the science of Transcendental Meditation. And today you will learn how you can rewire your stress response with Transcendental Meditation. And in our live session today, Dr. Gagné will reveal the science that underscores TM's effectiveness as a unique solution to chronic stress. And I'll share a little bit more in a minute about Gipal, and what he'll share today about with us is really the science and research that illustrates how regular practice of Transcendental Meditation cultivates a state of restful alertness, where your body experiences deep rest while the brain activates and strengthens its frontal circuits. And we'll get a better understanding what that really means and how that can benefit us and help resolve some of our response to stress and how we can, in a natural way, rewire our brain. So I'm looking forward to the session myself. And Dr. Gipal, let me just take a minute to introduce you to everyone. And so for everyone, Gipal is a medical doctor who has 30 years of experience in clinical practice, teaching and research in the field of obstetrics and stress management. And he has lectured extensively on the subjects of maternity care and the scientific research on Transcendental Meditation and its use in education and stress management. So with all these years under his belt, as well as being a former assistant professor in the Faculty of Medicine at McGill University, he just brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the session. So Gipal, I'm thrilled to have you with us tonight. And I'd also like to just introduce my co-host, Eric Simon, who will host the session with myself, Anna Marika Chu, and we're both TM teachers. I am located in Vancouver, in BC, and Eric is connecting from Montreal. So we're spanning almost all of Canada and are thrilled that you're joining us tonight. Would be great to hear from where you're connecting from, and we'll have time for your questions too. So what we'll start with is about a 45 to 50-minute presentation by Gipal, Dr. Gipal. And during the session, if you have questions that come up, you can already put them in the chat. We'll address your questions right after. So we'll take time for Q&A, and even if you want to ask yourself a question to Dr. Gipal, he's happy to answer them himself. So we'd love to have you on with us, and we're just recording this presentation part, not the Q&A. So yeah, feel really comfortable to share any questions that you have. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Gipal. Gipal, wonderful to have you with us. And yeah, we're looking forward to the session tonight.
So hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me. Some TM teachers, we have some TM teachers with us also this evening. So eventually, if you have specific questions about learning TM, they're going to be here also to answer. My role is I'd like mostly to share my experience with TM. I've been practicing this technique for now almost 40 years. And as a physician, like Anna Marika said, as a physician, I am a scientist, and I like to use this technique in my practice, suggest my patient to use it. So I had to inform myself all along with in the last 30 years almost on scientific research on TM and other meditation also. And so that's a little bit of a trip I will take with you through this my own experience. But you see, I've been using TM myself, and I credit TM for bringing me better health, success in life, happiness. And I think without this practice, my life would have been more difficult, because, you know, I'm in a field of medicine and surgery that is very demanding, lots of stress. You have to make your decision quickly, their life and death situation, and things like this. And many people in the field of health, they have problem with burnout and stress and all of these things. And I never had to deal with this. And after even 30, 35 years of practice, I'm still very happy and working. And I credit TM for being the instrument helping me to throughout my career. But you see, if I tell you this, it's only a testimony. If you go online, YouTube, and you go on TM websites, you'll see a lot of successful, happy people saying that TM made a big difference in their life. But how can I be sure that my life would have been different without TM? And how can I be sure that, you know, it is exactly this that made a big difference? So I was lucky enough, because I know science and studies, and in medicine we have a training for that. And very often when I had some nice experience in my life, support and better health, happiness, and all these things, more success, some research about TM would come up and just confirm that my experience was coming from my practice. So that's a little bit the reason why, you know, apart from only making the testimony, I will show you the proof of it, the scientific proof of that. So that's going to be my pleasure for the next maybe 40, 45 minutes, maybe 50. We never know how long it's gonna be, but let's start now. I'll share my screen here. Yeah. You see, we're talking about rewiring our brain, actually. And that's a very interesting concept that is relatively new. But in the past, we thought that the brain was pretty much almost like a rock. You have it. After about the age of 20, you have your brain, and that's going to be it. There's nothing you can change, and this is it. But we thought that, but, you know, research now, as we have lots of evidence that actually the brain is pretty plastic and it can change according to your experience. So that's why we can talk about rewiring the brain, actually. Okay, so that's going to be the topic of the presentation. There will be three parts. First, we will talk about neuroplasticity, how the experience can change our brain. So that's going to be the first, so that you understand the concept, how does it work, and you know, how useful or how bad it can be, because also it can go the wrong way sometimes. And then after that, we will examine how TM can make a big difference in this aspect. Okay. And then we will go further in explaining that we are probably living in a new reality where stress is everywhere and nobody can really escape stress. And if we take the responsibility of taking care of our stress, we make a big, big difference, not only for ourselves, but also for society and the people around us. So anyway, so that's gonna be the topic. First is we have two concepts. I have to explain. They are very important concepts, because just bear with me, because it's gonna be the topic of the rest of the presentation. First, epigenetic. Epigenetic, it's exactly what I said. You know, before we thought DNA and what is forever and you cannot change it. It's exactly like the brain, you know, it's like very fixed. But we know now that epigenetic is the modification of the expression of the gene from the from our experience. If we live through difficult experiences or good experiences, then the DNA can change itself a little bit and produce more positive or more negative effect on the cell. The DNA is driving the cells to divide and develop, and especially in the brain, it drives the connections between the neurons. So that comes to neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, it refers to this capacity of the brain to modify its structure, to actually really rewire itself. When exposed to stress, okay, it goes a bit the bad way. If you expose the brain to stress and over, the brain it has to favor survival, because stress is perceived like a threat. Any threat or anything that will just overwhelm a little bit our capacity, then the brain has to protect itself, protect life and everything. It's a natural reflex. It favors survival. Then the brain will wire itself in survival, meaning that it's like the fight or flight reflex. Lots of change will happen in the physiology in order to prepare us for to deal or face the threat. Okay, so the blood flow will be taken, let's say, from the guts and be sent to the muscles so that we can either fight or run away, and all of these things. Many things will happen like this, and if it becomes chronic, then there will be some discomfort that will become more permanent, like insomnia, anxiety, or chronic anger and lack of, understanding other, because somebody in survival mode will always think very short. It's a short, you don't think long term, it's short-term thinking because you're in survival. So it's just now that is important. Anyway, for learning and for evolution, it's not very good. If, on the other hand, I'm exposed to positive thing and more, relax and everything, then the body, the brain will wire itself for development, meaning that more ability to learn, better decision making, less mistake, better relationship, more sleep, better health, and all of this. So that's what we want. You see, development in physiology, it's called homeostasis. It's the equilibrium. Homeostasis is the status of the physiology where it's rested and it's balanced, okay? Allostasis is the survival expression for in physiology. It is it represents the compromise that the physiology has to make to get from homeostasis into survival mode. All of these compromise I told you about, brain will change, blood flow will be directed somewhere else, and then you become hyper vigilant, sleep will be more difficult. The physiology has to compromise because it has to face a threat, okay? The problem is that if you have chronically this kind of survival mode, then it becomes more like permanent. So I'll show you this in a few slides. But basically here, the slides, it just illustrate what I just said, is that we used to think at what we inherit from our parents or DNA, it is fixed. It's not true anymore because the genes can be changed by epigenetic. Environment and experience will change by epigenetic, and then this modified DNA, it doesn't modify the structure, but it modifies its expression. So DNA will express itself either in development or in survival, and then brain will rewire itself in order to respond this, and then it's going to affect physical health, mental health, and behavior, both. So bear with me, we have some scientific experiment showing that, Okay, so now, if we say that, having good experience, being around people that we appreciate and never being rushed on anything, that would be the best. But we know life is not like this. There are challenges and we have to run, and modern life is getting faster and faster and faster. And I'll show you later that we are probably living an epidemic of stress, and environment is not very friendly, or even if it is friendly, sometimes we inherit that from our birth. Okay, some tendency we get from birth. So anyway, so the question is, what is the best environment? So in order to give me the best epigenetic effect and brain plasticity totally good, and then behavior and physical health perfect, okay? There is no perfect environment unless, it's very rare you can have an environment like this, but we can have specific experience that will send a good message to the epigenetic and then develop fully the brain, okay? So I believe, and I will show you this in the next few minutes, that TM, Transcendental Meditation, it gives this experience of restful alertness. We will describe it more in detail. But when you have this experience of restful alertness, it is like a reset of the brain from wherever it is into development mode. Okay, it's very quick, it resets it, and then it sends a good signal for epigenetic and brain plasticity. Everything starts working properly. Okay, so that's it's important to understand. This is this experience that is specific and unique to TM, the restful alertness, that will give the positive effect on the brain. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that TM is also different from other type of meditation, and that's why it's kind of unique in its capacity to influence the brain in a positive way. What is different? Basically, I'll go quickly on this because the TM teacher at the end, if you want more information, they can explain. But basically, in a few words, is that most other meditation technique always work on the active level of the mind, from one thought to the other to the other. See, the mind works in a horizontal way. Usually, we think something, then this thought will take me to another thought, another thought, another thought. So it's like the wave on top of the ocean or something like this. We're just going like this with the thinking process. TM is different from other kind of meditation because actually you learn with a mantra, with a sound and everything. The teacher has to, now we won't be able to learn TM now because it has to be taught from, in person by a teacher. So, but anyway, basically you use a sound that has no meaning, and then it allows, the way you use it, it allows the mind to dive inside to quieter level of thoughts, quieter, until you go to silence at the bottom. It's like going not horizontal, but vertically in the thinking process, in a few words. So it's effortless. You don't have to do anything. It's a natural, you use a natural tendency of the mind to go toward more pleasure, more happiness. So if you open the door, it's just gonna go there. So that's a way of seeing it. Anyway, it's very different. That's why it has such a powerful effect on the brain. Okay. Just to keep going on why do we have so much of a problem with stress. There is a new area of research that in my field of obstetric, it's very important because we deal with pregnancy, the babies, the newborn and everything. But actually, if you do, it's called DOHAD, the developmental origin of health and disease. Now there is more and more and more research demonstrating that the health problem that you have, maybe when you're going to be 40, 50 years old, you start having a bit of cholesterol, high blood pressure, or some other disease, or any health problem, it could be due. We usually think, oh, sometimes it's my lifestyle and everything. Lifestyle has something to do, of course, but we very often inherit that from birth. It's this area of research show that metabolic function and response to stress, they are programmed very early in life, even before birth. Okay, you'll understand more at the end. I have some other good research demonstrating this, but it's nice to understand that no matter what, we're all born with some of this program. We're programmed to deal with stress in a specific way. And if it's not the right way, then you just keep on building problems, and then eventually, like, insomnia or all of these things, and eventually health problems also will be more. And this program thing is all due to cortisol. It's all a matter of cortisol. This is this slide here, it just shows this. The key hypothesis to explain early life programming is overexposure to glucocorticoid is cortisol, actually. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And if your trajectory from birth is a little bit toward more, you see, we're all born in between development and survival. Maximum survival would be someone with very big problems, and development mode, perfectly development mode, somebody extremely efficient, always happy, good health, maximum longevity and everything. So we're all born with something in between. It's not never perfect, but hopefully it's never too bad also. But it's all decided by this activated HPA is hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It is the axis of secretion of cortisol. If it's primed too much, then cortisol gets always produced too much, and you'll see later, you'll understand how it works. Anyway, so that's all due to cortisol. So the next few slides will be about cortisol, okay? Because it's very important to understand the way it works. Accumulated stress leads to higher baseline cortisol level. When you reach an higher baseline of cortisol, and it's always higher than it should be, then you have chronic stress, okay? And how does it work is that, here the gray line is cortisol. You see, this is the baseline cortisol level, the homeostatic development mode. You have it at the bottom. Then life is normal, we all have our challenge and everything. There is a challenge, then you secrete some cortisol to face the challenge, and then cortisol goes back to normal. Okay, that's very good. But unfortunately, it doesn't work always that way, depending how prime your HPA axis is. And then you have another challenge, then cortisol will not quite go down to its original level. And then you keep going up and going up. It may take some time, this over time. You may end up, with chronic stress in more or less in survival mode. Can be different level of that, okay? So this is how chronic stress will just quietly, you don't know, you don't realize, but it's damaging a little bit, and it's influencing behavior, health, mental and physical and behavior and everything. And in science and physiology, the difference between this baseline cortisol level, which is survival, and this one that is development mode, the normal basic one, the difference between two, they call it the allostatic load. It's like you're building some heaviness in your system. You have a load that you keep building, and then eventually you have to live with at that level of cortisol that is always a little bit too high. But the problem is that once you're like at the top here, you have a higher baseline cortisol, but when it's time to react, when you have another stress, you see here, it's illustration. small stress, biggest, okay, big stress there, but now you see the cortisol cannot go higher up because you're already top off, or in a way, you're not top off again exactly in the same at the same level, but the people who are at the very top, they can just not cope with what's going on, so they end up burnout, exhausted, and with more symptoms and everything. This would be the bad outcome of this. But you have to understand that chronic stress leads to a higher baseline of cortisol and a lower response to acute stress. When you have an acute stress, you're not able to face it because it's you have no reserve. It's like an engine, Engine is running too high. It's not idle. It's running at 50% of its at this RPM. Then if you want more, you don't have much reserve. If you start from the bottom, much more power. Okay. So anyway, that's a bit of an example of that. You see, now we're going to be looking at what is allostatic load. In physiology, allostatic load is you can measure physiologic indicators of allostatic load. They are as follow here: systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, high density lipoprotein. This is cholesterol. This is total cholesterol ratio. That's another thing of cholesterol. Glycosylated hemoglobin is a marker of diabetes. Urinary cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, they're all stress hormones. They are stress hormone. And then you have the dihydroepiandrosterone sulfate, which is DHEA. Let's say DHEA, it's easier. DHEA is a marker of aging. The marker of aging. Now, the good news is that TM was shown in many studies to reduce all of these things. It has an effect on systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, cholesterol, glycosylate hemoglobin, like for diabetes. It has, of course, cholesterol, and then it has a peculiar effect on DHEA. DHEA, usually you have more of it when you're born, and then as you age, the level of DHEA will decrease, and eventually when it's very, very low, you're at the end, kind of, it's just a marker of aging. It's like, if I take the DH level of anybody, I could guess the age, okay? But the funny thing is that with TM, people with TM usually have a DHEA higher than their chronological age, meaning that they're physiologically younger. Studies have shown about 10 years, when you've been practicing TM for a while, it shows that you are physiologically younger than your age, because the DHEA just kept being higher than the average person of your age, kind of. It's very, very interesting. And actually, longevity, some studies have shown that they taught TM to elderly people, like they were average 72 years old, and they followed them for 15 years. But they started at 72, so that's already, you have quite a lot of allostatic load accumulated at 72 years old if you never practiced TM. But right away, allostatic load went down, and they lived 23% more living longevity, 23% more, 40% less cardiac disease, mortality, and everything. Anyway, so it is well shown in all of these physiologic indicator. Actually, when you put them together, they call them I forgot now. Anyway, it's gonna come back eventually. So this is the good news. And how does it work? Everything I told you was shown in these two studies. Not everything, not about the the longevity and everything, but about the cortisol. Now we're back at cortisol, especially cortisol. They took students in a school, they were young students, they took a bunch of students, they separated in two groups. One group was taught TM, the other group kept just doing the regular, stuff that they're usually doing. And after 4 months, they tested both groups, and the TM subject showed a decrease in the basal plasma cortisol and average cortisol level, meaning that from a higher level, they came down a bit more toward development mode, okay? So that was a nice news, the regular student, they kept having their cortisol level average higher up. They took the same people and they subjected them to a pain in a laboratory test for pain. It's actually dipping your hand or your fingers into ice water. Anyway, at the beginning, it's only cold, but eventually it becomes painful. So it's kind of a standard test that they use in labs to test the people, their resistance or resilience to pain. Okay, so what they found there was interesting. They found that the meditating student, they had a lower cortisol level on average, but when you submit them to pain, their cortisol level went higher than the other group. Okay, so it's from a higher baseline and lower response to acute stress that they had before. They became with a lower baseline, but higher response to stress. So at the beginning, people said, how come, they shoot up their cortisol. Actually, they call it, they say this is a reversal of the effect of chronic stress. And my next slide will show you this. It's not, we'll go back to our previous slide. You have the survival mode there, but the student now, they're back into development mode. But then when you stress them in any way, they will have more secretion of cortisol. And actually, this is normal. This is wanted because you want to be able to face the stress. You want to be able to deal with it. But the big thing is not the amount of cortisol level that you're going to, it's the resilience, it's the capacity to go back to baseline. That is called resilience, okay? And then instead of damaging the physiology with stress, people are more able to deal with the stress. They're more capable of facing it. And that was my experience also. I told you I was going to just give you some proof of my life experience about TM. And in the field that I work in, you need that kind of response, to be able to just respond, but not carry the trauma, because we all have, in healthcare, especially surgery, when you live to acute, when you live through emergencies and acute surgery and stuff like this, sometimes it's really not fun and you can end up traumatized. But the thing is, we all live these things, but you have to be able to recover. Capacity to recover is there. Okay, that's the way it goes. And I'll give you a living experience. I told you that, no, that's my testimony, but what about anybody else? Okay, so there was a very nice study was done during the pandemic in Miami. There were the 3 hospitals, at the beginning of the pandemic, before the vaccine. That was a very tough time for healthcare workers. They were all stressed out. They had to deal with these sick patients, and also at any time they could get themselves and their life was even in danger, on top of being overwhelmed with the amount of people coming in. So somebody who was actually, there was Dr. Nestor, he was looking for relief for, the healthcare workers. So he decided to go through a study, a TM study, because TM was known to do this, to be more effective in dealing with stress. So they took 65 healthcare providers. They were physicians and nurses, And they matched them with 65 lifetime as usual. So meaning another 65 healthcare professionals, but they just kept going, doing their own stuff, okay? But this other group learned TM. And actually, Dr. Nestor at the end was totally amazed because this guy is not practicing TM, but maybe now he started, mind you, having seen all these results. I never asked, but anyway, it doesn't say in the paper. But watch this. They were very interested in measuring the effect very quickly. So these people who took TM and the people who did not take TM, they had to go through 4 tests. Test at time 0. Both groups started at the same level. They were tests on anxiety, insomnia, happiness, some other, another 4, burnout, depression. They had to go through all of these tests. Well, anyway, I show you only 2 here because they're all the same. But what was amazing, and it's the first time, nobody ever did a test after only 2 weeks of TM, because everybody, you know, thinks it's going to take more time, you know, do the test only at 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. But these guys, they were very bold. They did a test after 2 weeks, and what they found is 45 reduction in anxiety level in the TM group only after 2 weeks, okay? And after 2 weeks, also insomnia was relieved 33%, and it kept going down, you know, to 44%. And then if you just keep going, it's going to be completely relieved in after 5-6 months, because you see the curve is just going down. But that's a test, that's a citation from him. This rapid and dramatic improvement in stress-related symptoms is not often seen with the use of medication, much less with other easy-to-learn mental technique, because TM is such an easy mental technique to learn, effortless, that nobody expected that kind of results. So that was also my experience, but much before that, you know, I've been practicing since the 1980s, but it's nice to see the proof of this. And okay. So you understand now what is resilience, how the brain can be rewired into development from a stress level, from a survival level into development mode. There is another test for happiness, well-being. It says the same, and burnout the same. I mean, there was just made it a bit simple here, but it's a free article. Actually, if you go online, it's +1, you'll find it. You see it's improving mental health and well-being of healthcare worker. If you just go on Google, it's free to look at this research. So you'll have all the information about this. So it's looked like it's almost too good to be true. Okay. So I have to explain to you how it works, because if I just leave you like this, you say there must be something wrong, you know. It's very powerful, and it just turns the brain into a positive way of working. And I'll show you very briefly what's happening. It's now, you see, me, when I started TM back in the 80s, I didn't have that kind of study to convince me, but I just had my own experience. So I just went on because the experience was great. But see, today now we need the proof, okay? So the proof is here. It's an MRI of the brain of someone practicing TM. And what you see is the red on MRI, you know, the red color is in more blood flow. More blood flow to the higher part of the brain. The brain, you can divide it quickly into 2 parts. This is the top of the brain is the thinking brain, and the bottom of the brain is your, I want to say, the automatic cruise control, the automatic pilot. Automatic pilot of the physiology is at the bottom here. It's the thalamus, cerebellum, and pons, and all these basal ganglia, they would call at the bottom of the brain. They drive your blood pressure, your respiratory rate, your digestion, all of these things that you cannot change. It's just going automatically. The thinking, and it's not available to the thinking. You know, you cannot say, "Oh, please, my heart, you should slow down," or you cannot say, "Oh, well, I would like my blood pressure to go down." No. It's an automatic process. It's there. And you see, the blue is the decrease of blood flow. When you practice TM, you have an increased blood flow at the thinking level of the brain and a decreased blood flow at the level of the automatic pilot of your physiology, which is it's a peculiar, almost paradoxical, because usually the brain they go together, these two areas. If you slow down the area here in blue, you fall asleep up here. So it's not, and if you wake up here too much, it's going to be red here also. Anyway, it usually goes together. Now they're kind of going apart. Okay, that's unique to TM. It's called restful alertness. And it's during that time, the body goes to a profound rest. Blood pressure goes down, respiratory rate will go down. You don't realize when you practice TM, you don't feel all of this, but it's just very nice and silent. But anyway, you need to take the measurement in order to find out. But it's a very profound rest. And actually, some scientists now say healing takes place mainly during sleep and dreaming. We know now we spend 30% of our life sleeping, and strangely enough, we did not understand until very recently why we were sleeping. We all realized we need it for rest, but how come we need this? We need it anyway. They say that the physiology is healing itself repairing itself during sleep. But you know now with the research I just showed you before, and this kind of healing here is very profound. It's like resetting the brain. In only a few weeks, you have a big change in the, I mean, these healthcare workers, they needed to sleep much more, many days in order to get the 44% reduction in anxiety. Actually, sometimes it doesn't even work because they don't sleep properly when you're very anxious. So anyway, with TM, 2 weeks, bang. So this is a big difference. I mean, unique. That's why I feel impelled to tell the people about this, because it's a shame that such a technique is available and people don't use it. It's such a pity, sort of. Anyway, now, okay, we're talking about restful alertness. I'll give you a real example of restful alertness. This is this study. I like it because the researchers, they didn't know probably, but I found that looking at the results, you see exactly restful alertness here. They took a bunch of a student. In the US, they have an epidemic of high blood pressure in teenage. Anyway, because they're probably born with in survival mode a bit more, you know, there is all these, no, anyway, we won't go into the details of why, but socially, you can explain this. But anyway, they have high blood pressure. So they took a bunch of students, taught them TM, and then after 4 months, blood pressure of the TM group compared to the non-TM group was lower. So that's nice. Actually, it means that only after 4 months, they were able to reset the bottom of the brain so that the blood pressure, the respiratory rate, everything came down. Anyway, this is restful, okay? But at the same time, they were enlivening their thinking brain, because you see, remember the red area here, especially the frontal cortex, which is the decision maker of your brain, is the frontal cortex. So anyway, another study of the same population show a beneficial impact of TM on absenteeism, rule infraction, and suspension rate. All of a sudden, these students, they became better person. They taught more, they were more thinking long-term. They were more able to learn. They didn't find the school so boring. They were able to just think more clearly. And it made them better person, actually, better student, actually, because rule infraction and absenteeism is not. You see, the best example of that, just quickly, is that when you're young and you're in survival mode, you wake up in the morning, you say, it's useless to go to school. It's not going to take me anywhere. I'd rather run my bike around town and see my friends. You know, I'm not going to go to school. So you just drop out, it's kind of something like that, because you don't think long term. You think short term, everything just now, my pleasure, and without planning anything in the future. And when you're in development mode, you kind of realize that it's nice. You know, I'm just going to learn more things and things like this. This is here the example of restful alertness. Restful is the left side, alertness is the right side. So this is a living example of what it does. So you start TM, right away you have improvement in health, and also as a bonus, you have an improvement in the capacity of learning, memory, less mistake, take better decision, and probably have much better relationship with your environment. Anyway, so that's basically what it shows here. And it was recognized by the American Art Association. I think it was in 2013, they came out with this policy statement. They studied different kind of meditation for high blood pressure and everything. And what they found is just written here very quickly. TM is the only meditation practice that has been shown to lower blood pressure. The other techniques, they don't have this kind of resetting of the automatic pilot of your brain. Okay, and as a bonus, I told you about the substantial reduced rate of death, heart attack, and stroke. That's what I told you before, like 23% more longevity, 44% less heart attack and stroke, even at an advanced age. So imagine when you start young, benefits will be much more. Anyway, so that's about the this restful alertness. But you see now, what is happening in the brain while you do this? Okay, you do TM, you see it here. EEG is the electrical measurement of electric activity of the brain. You measure the electric activity in microvolts, you know, little waves like this. But just very quickly here, I'll just explain. You see, normally when you close your eyes, this is here an EEG. It's these electrodes are from the frontal area, the front of the brain, middle of the brain, back of the brain. So you have frontal here, middle here, and the back here, the brain. You see, when you close your eyes normally, just normal, waves are a bit distorted in the brain. You have only the restful part of the, because the back of the brain is this area of the brain where you see, this the vision. So vision, when you close your eyes, the vision starts to rest because there's nothing to see. But you see, when you start TM, this restful part of the brain here, it spreads everywhere. And what is important is coherence, is that these waves at the front and at the back, they're exactly the same, or nearly exactly the same. So we call it brain wave coherence. The only way that the brain waves can be the same here and the same here is because they're connected, they work in sync, okay? And sort of, and TM is the only technique known to increase EEG coherence like this. It means that the brain is a network. The brain has many parts, you know, right side, front, back, temporal, parietal, frontal, occipital, and everything. It's all regions of the brain. What we witness here is that the brain is working coherently. It's connecting. The network is now functioning to its maximum possibility. So researchers have shown that this connection of all the parts of the brain is correlated. Many studies were done in school, intelligence, creativity, learning ability, everything good about the brain, just name it, like short-term memory, academic performance, health. Of course, we saw health, but now I show you the thinking of the brain, the way it can be improved. Okay, so researchers went into more detail about this, and they invented what they call the brain integration scale. Brain integration scale, they measure on EEG and a small test on the computer, they can measure actually 3 different factors that the brain can produce. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail of this, but these 3 factors you put into a formula and it gives you a score. Like you can put anybody on this test and you'll have a score. So they found that people practicing TM, they improve the score over time, always improve a lot. Okay. So now the researchers, Fred Travis, he decided to validate this, see if it's important, because you want to improve the score. It's like I give you 5 or 6 or 7. What does it mean? Does it make a difference in your life? So he went and saw the best people in the world, like the Olympic champions in Norway. They looked at the best administrators of companies that you see these guys, they're being paid millions of dollars to run a company. Why do you think they pay them this amount? It's because you put this guy there, it works. They're going to make the company grow. So they took the best one and they compared to the more ordinary one. And every time they had the very best person, they found that they had a very high brain integration score, okay, higher than usual. It seems like the score of brain integration is related to your capacity of being the best in your field. I could go on, and maybe eventually we'll go give you another presentation on this because it's very nice. And anyway, so they found that finally, they found that brain integration is probably the new goal to improve mental and physical health, but also reach level of human development so far inaccessible with regular education. This is something nobody knew of a training practice to do this. Only TM has shown to be able to do this. And this is an example of a school here in the US where the kids they practice TM in school and since the very young age, and they just win everything. The school is just at the top of always winning everything. So that's the proof of this difference. So it means that if you really want to reach the top of your field, no matter what you're doing, we're not going to all become gold medalists Olympic, because you have to have the background of it. But if you're a nurse or a carpenter or an electrician or a doctor or anything you do, it's going to allow you to be the top. Most likely, this is what it shows. We need to test it on more and more people. So you're welcome to test it on yourself. Anyway, so that's good news. So conclusion. What's the reality now? Why should we take care of the stress like this? And I'll give you quickly a study that was done in the US. That is my field of obstetrics. And I like this study because these guys, they wanted to study the development of the fetus in the mother during the pregnancy with MRI. And so they wanted to have the baseline. What is a normal development of a kid, of a fetus during pregnancy? So they were recruiting 119 very normal women. They took the most normal woman pregnant, of course, but they were asking for no problem, no health problem. You feel good. I'm happy. I don't feel stressed out. I feel all okay. You know, I'm just fine. Okay. So they took these 119 and they ran some tests before they started the thing, and they were very surprised. If you read the paper, the researchers, they were amazed. They said, we never expected that 64% of these women would test positive for anxiety, depression, stress, or a combination of that. So that's the new reality. New reality is that we are all probably, even if you feel good, I'm sorry to say, you probably need TM anyway, because that's the fact here. And guess what happened is that they went ahead with the study and they found that this 63% that was suffering from some anxiety, despite the fact that they didn't feel so bad, they had their baby had actually different development of the brain, smaller hippocampus and biochemistry, probably born with some in some survival mode. Okay, so the effect is that now in school, that's a recent article. I'm just showing this recent article. Nearly 25%, actually 20% in primary school and 30% in secondary school of students have intervention plan for disorders like all of this list here: hyperactivity, autism, developmental behavior problem. If you speak to any educator now, you will see they are exhausted themselves because problems are just piling up. And eventually they say, if we don't do anything, in about 10 years, we won't be able to treat all these people. Resources are not enough to take care of this. It's such a disaster in coming, you know, and it's due to the fact that probably these early programming I told you at the beginning is now showing into the population more and more. So, final conclusion. You understood that why we do need to manage stress with TM. We have to stop this vicious circle of chronic stress, take care of oneself, of ourselves, make sure we develop our maximum potential, be the best we can without strain, without working more, actually working less, because when you close your eyes, you take TM, it's like having 3 nights of sleep. Just in a flash, you saw what it did to the hospital, the healthcare professional. And we should do that for ourselves and also for society and for future generation. You understood why? Because if we don't do anything, it's going to be a vicious circle, keep going and keep going. So thank you very much for listening. And I'm going to stop the sharing. We got to stop the recording also probably, but thank you. And we're ready